is June 10th, 2022. Thank you for joining us at Secular AZ today. Secular AZ is a 501c3 organization focused on protecting the Constitution and the separation of church and state for over a decade. The last few weeks, not a whole bunch has been going on at the Capitol, as members of the ruling party seem to be in a disagreement about the budget, and they still don't seem to have any intention of inviting the Democrats to the table to work out a bipartisan budget. But they did make time to put forward a proclamation titled, and hold on to your hats, Equal Opportunity for Life on behalf of Unborn Black Babies Day. And this is not the first time that Representative Walt Blackman has been focused on other people's uteruses. In 2019, Representative Blackman created the Proclamation for the Sanctity of Human Life Day. So the question we're asking today is, why is Representative Walt Blackman obsessed with unborn fetuses? But more importantly, the question to ask is, are any of the claims in these proclamations accurate? So today we are going to dispel some of the myths presented as facts in these proclamations with none other than Chris Love. Chris Love is a tribal attorney, the outgoing chair of Planned Parenthood Advocates for Arizona, and an all-around champion when it comes to calling out hypocrisy wherever she finds it. If you don't follow her on Twitter, you probably should, because it is fire. Welcome, Chris. How are you today? Uh-oh, did she just freeze? There she.
I am wonderful, and I'm calling you all from the crepe bar. Oh, can you hear me? I froze. Can you guys see me? Can you hear me?
We can
see
you.
Jeannie, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, and you're just a little bit choppy, but it seems to be better now.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm calling you from my last meeting, which occurred at the crepe bar. So I'm filled with crepes and coffee and ready to go.
Well, did I miss anything in your introduction at all? Was there more that I need to add?
No, I think that was perfect. Yes, I'm the chair for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona for the next few days. And then June 30th is my last day. So then I get to be an ex officio. So it's bittersweet.
Well, you've brought some really amazing programming over the years that you've been part of Planned Parenthood. So I know I appreciate your voice, and I really appreciate your perspective. So let's just dig right into this nonsense. And I thought that, we could lay the foundation here with the 2019 proclamation. And then I'm feeling a little bit cheeky today just because everything is so ridiculous in the world. But are these now holidays? How do we celebrate them? What are we supposed to do to honor these days? I'm not really sure. So in the first proclamation, the one that was crafted in 2019, it's riddled with so much misinformation. So if you're fine with it, then we can just kind of take them point by point. Okay. All right. So this one, the first one that he claims, he says that many mothers have been physically and psychologically harmed by abortion. He doesn't back this up with any facts. And you work, you represent an organization that provides all kinds of healthcare, including abortions, to various patients. Do you get a lot of feedback that there's a lot of physical and psychological harm?
Actually, quite the opposite. I think that we know throughout the country that abortion is actually more safe than going through with childbirth, and especially for Black women like myself, where we are forced birth and we are our white and other counterparts, right? So actually giving birth is the more dangerous proposition, and even cited in the Dobbs piece, and that's the one that's going to come down in a little bit. There was a statistic that said that folks were 75 times more likely to die in childbirth than for having an abortion, right? So abortion is safe. We've also done some polling to show that an overwhelming 95% of folks who receive abortions are satisfied with their choices, and we know happens right after that they've made the choice for abortion, and then 5 years later, it's still true. I'm someone that had an abortion when I was 19 years old. I didn't have, I had no second thoughts about it. I was glad to have done it. And because I had that abortion, I was able to make choices in my life that benefited me. I was able to finish college. I was able to go to law school. I was able to find my husband. I was able to raise 3 children who I didn't biologically have. And then I was able to have a baby when I chose to do so. And so I think that, I'm an anecdotal example, but the research backs up my experience that abortion can be affirming. Most people have abortion longer pregnant, they're happy with that result.
Right. And I mean, I may not be right exactly on this one, but isn't the United States the worst country, the worst Western country, first world country to give birth in? Isn't our mortality rate, infant mortality rate higher, mother mortality rate higher here in the United States than any other Western country?
Yeah, absolutely. If America is exceptional at one thing, it is exceptional in making sure that we have bad outcomes for folks that decide to have babies. It is a dangerous place and a dangerous proposition to give birth. I support anyone who wants to make that choice, but I think that we are also inhospitable to making sure that pregnant people can have the care that they need once they've made the choice to have a baby, right? We're a country that doesn't have paid maternity leave. We're a country that doesn't recognize that pregnancy, after having pregnancy, bodies change and healing is required. We just send people back to the assembly line once they've had their babies. So we're inhospitable to folks actually making the choice to move forward with having a baby. And we don't offer much support once those babies are here.
Well, I think about it too. I can't say for sure how Representative Blackman voted, but I know that Kelly Butler, Representative Butler, who's now running for the community college system, she every single year has been putting forward a bill that would increase funding for mothers, access funding for mothers to include dental work, because we know too that disease can enter through our mouth. And if we can't afford to get, a bad tooth fixed, taken out, something, then it could travel throughout the body. I mean, my dad's second husband died because she had dental care. She needed some dental work and she never got it done. And it made her very sick. And that is how she died. Mm-hmm. And every year I see this bill or addendum or whatever it is with regards to the budget just get voted against, and it's a fraction of our budget. I think it's like $700,000 or $800,000 in the budget. So again, the hypocrisy is showing, right?
Yeah, and right, and I think that if Republicans were really that would safe, have babies safely, and then to safely raise their families. And we just see the exact opposite every year in the legislature.
So let's move on to the next claim.
Am I paused? Okay.
You're just, it's a little bit choppy. I can get the gist of what you're saying, but it is a little bit choppy, but we'll work through it because, this was last minute and I appreciate you helping us out last minute like this. So
of course.
The next claim that he makes, I mean, you've kind of already talked about this, but one of the claims in this 2019 proclamation is that women have faced dangerous conditions and substandard medical care in abortion clinics across the country.
Wrong, and he doesn't have any data to back that up. Again, having a baby is infinitely more dangerous than deciding to have an abortion, especially within the first trimester when most abortions occur. And we know that abortions that occur later in pregnancy are because there are some health or viability issues with respect to the fetus or with respect to the person carrying the fetus. And so those procedures are still overwhelmingly safer than moving forward with a live birth.
And then I feel like, again, this one, you've already pretty much answered it. Countless women and men live with the emotional scars of the tragic and painful choice to have an abortion. And, I've known many people who had abortions, and I don't know very many of them who necessarily had any kind of emotional scars. I mean, is that something, I don't know if you do surveys, but do your patients come back at you and say, I'm so angry that this happened?
No, and I think that this kind of language plays into abortion stigma, right? And so we're trying to do this thing where we're destigmatizing abortion. We're not whispering it in polite company anymore, because I think a lot of the psychological effects that the antis cite to are largely due in part to the fact that there's such a stigma built around abortion, right? And if we just treated abortion like what it is, healthcare, there wouldn't be this stigma attached. Now, mind you, going in, people have their thoughts about what abortion is going to be. And that's because we've let the other side kind of frame the narrative. We need to stop that. We need to stop playing into that. And we know, again, that the outcomes at the end are that 95% of people who had abortions are absolutely happy with their choice to do so.
Right. Now this one, I think this is a really interesting claim that he made, and especially given, who you represent in the courtroom and in depositions and things like that, because the next point he says, no right to abortion is rooted in the traditions of the American people, and no right to abortion is conferred by the Constitution of the United States. I mean, I'm curious, you do work for different tribes throughout the state of Arizona. And when I think of the American people, I mean, the traditions, they were kind of here first. And so I wonder, is there some kind of taboo or stigma around abortion in Native communities?
Not that I know of, and I'm not a tribal member myself, so I can't speak for any tribe in particular. But I will say that I think that tribes are about on par with abortion as we are, everyone else is, right? They have a contingent of folks because of religiosity, quite frankly, since I'm talking to secular Arizona. Because of religiosity, some folks do have a problem with abortion, but overwhelmingly we find that the support for abortion rights within tribal communities is the same or similar to outside of tribal communities, right? But I do want to address this whole textual constitution thing. There are a lot of the rights that we enjoy, today as American citizens aren't specifically spelled out in the Constitution. I think that's just a really basic and ignorant way of talking about a whole lot of things. And, we know that in the text of the Constitution, slavery was okay until we amended the Constitution, right? I think that there is jurisprudence is what makes up our whole body of where our rights are. And the judges, and specifically the Supreme Court judges, have interpreted the Constitution in ways that imbue those rights upon us. But no, not every single right that we enjoy is spelled out in the Constitution. And frankly, that's just an ignorant way of looking at things.
Agreed. And, I heard a really interesting thing on NPR a couple of days ago where they were kind of talking about this crusade against, frankly, not just, against abortion, but also against midwives and against women having, the control over their bodies back in like the 1800s. So when someone was giving birth, oftentimes the baby was born at home. Both of my children were born at home with a midwife, and it was perfectly safe. And then the OBGYNs kind of started getting involved. And there was one in particular, I don't remember his name, but that was his crusade. And that was when, I believe, was it like the late 1800s when we started seeing some of these laws against abortion get onto the books?
Yes. And so I think that there has been mostly everyone before modern times had a baby with a midwife. And midwifery has been very important to our traditions as Americans. But we've seen this move to gynecology. And a lot of that was racially motivated because Black women were the ones that were serving as midwives. And if they were providing that service and could monetize monetize it, right, then that was a market that gynecologists and obstetricians wanted to have. And so some of our modern rights with respect to our reproductive rights are really based, a lot of those old laws are really based in our racist foundations in this country. There's no reason that folks shouldn't have midwives help with delivery of their babies unless there is some specific medical complication where they will need immediate medical intervention. So midwifery is safe, abortion is safe. Self-managed abortion is even safe. And, I just want to take this opportunity to say that all of this wire hanger imagery that we're seeing now is kind of offensive to me because most abortions are performed as medication abortions. No wire hangers, folks, you take some pills. And so, we need to be sharing that medication abortion is safe and effective and finding ways to make sure that Americans have access to medication abortion, despite what happens with Roe versus Wade.
Well, and I was pleased to see whatever that bill was kind of die this year about medicated abortions, because the other thing is, these things are FDA approved. We don't need politicians meddling where it's better left to the medical experts to figure that stuff out. So it's just kind of ridiculous.
Absolutely. And I think that we know that half of the misty cocktail that we take to perform abortions is actually used in miscarriages. I've had to take pills when I had a miscarriage because the second pill actually expels the products of conception from the body. So it's regularly used by folks who miscarry, right? And so I'm glad that we saw that bill die too. It crashed and burned once coming out of committee.
Thank goodness. So then there's more to this. He talks about Roe and Doe and how neither of them have any basis. But here's the thing that really gets me, because he goes on to say that fetuses are people, blah, 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 and they need some protections just like every other person, citizen, resident. And all I could think about was the SCOTUS decision this week that will allow border agents to unconstitutionally enter a person's home and assault them. So it's kind of hard to keep up with whose rights matter in this country, but I think that we all kind of intrinsically know whose rights matter.
Oh, absolutely. Authoritarian rights matter. That's whose rights matter, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that you make an interesting point, right? We're supposed to convey all of the rights and privileges to a fetus that can't survive outside the womb, but we're not prioritizing the rights of the pregnant person. Right. And that's just ridiculous to me. Unfortunately, with SB 1164 that passed, was it SB or HB? I can't remember. 1164 that passed in the last session. One of the things that remains from that bill, because portions of it have been put on hold pending the outcome of the Supreme Court case, and that portion of the bill has actually gone up to the Supreme Court. But we're taking a look at personhood here in Arizona, and that provision remains. So in Arizona, a fetus is viewed as a person, which is quite scary to me. But I think it's only viewed as a person with respect to, limiting the person carrying the fetus's reproductive choices. That fetus isn't viewed as a person for the purposes of collecting child support. That fetus isn't viewed as a person for the purposes of riding in the HOV lane, even, right? So I think that I think that antis love to pick and choose when they want to acknowledge a fetus as a life, but they're totally inconsistent.
Yeah, 100%. So this one, now we're going to move on to the latest proclamation, which has so many words. There's just no way that I could say it all. Plus, it doesn't matter. It says that the abortion industry is disproportionately, and I find the word industry kind of interesting as well.
Right.
Yeah, is disproportionately and discriminatorily targeting Black women and children. And when I read that, I was actually just kind of sitting, I always have it on my second monitor while I'm doing my work. And I just started to hear this proclamation be read, and I was like, what are they saying right now? And all I could think of is like, do you all go out into the communities where you know that there's a lot of Black people, and do you like canvass and try to get them to stop on by?
No, I listen. Walt Blackman grew up in Snowflake, Arizona. I don't know that there was another Black person around for miles, and I don't see him surrounding himself with a lot of the Black community. So, take that as you will. But I don't think that there's an intentional target of Black folks who can become pregnant, right? We have to take a look at the totality of the circumstances. What's the group that has the lowest birth outcomes? That's Black women. What is the group that has the largest gap when we talk about pay? That's Black women. What are we talking about when we're talking about poverty statistics, and what group is destined and doomed to poverty because of all of the other systems and foundational racism we have in this country? That's Black women. So if Black folks are choosing to have abortions, it's because our environment is inhospitable to having babies and raising them. And that's the pure truth of the matter. Mm-hmm. And thank God, goodness. Listen,
you can still say that.
I'm not a religious person, but my mom's a preacher's kid, right? It's that, thank goodness that we have the ability to make our own reproductive choices, because we have so many choices that are taken away from us just because of the foundational racism that exists in our country. So I'd like to see Walt Blackman address those things and fix those things first, and then maybe you would see Black pregnant people making different choices.
Right. So on the second point of his 2022 proclamation, I actually do think he got this one right, because he says no racial group in American society has ever been left out of societal protection more, or suffered more deliberate discrimination, dehumanization, agonizing dismemberment, and death legally imposed upon them than Black children. And he got that one right, Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, he could go even further, just Black people. Right. We just saw Tempe police officers watch a homeless man drown. Right. We've seen the consequences of all of the state-sponsored violence that's committed against Black and brown bodies. Right. So, sure, he can have that one. That's fine. But I don't see him trying to do anything to make it better. This proclamation doesn't address that.
Right. I mean, and just, I don't know if it was Florida, it was somewhere, there was a Black woman who was tased, a pregnant Black woman who was tased in the stomach repeatedly. It was the most disturbing, one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. And so to say that you are pro-life and to support, that kind of brutality in our police forces, because we've seen time and time again too, that a lot of times police officers don't pay, don't really have to do any, we've seen them murder people on the streets and just get a slap on the wrist or an administrative leave. So,
right.
So, okay, let's go to this next one. Now, it does say here that Black babies in America are, Black fetuses really, are currently over 3 times more likely to be aborted than white babies. Approximately 20 million Black babies have been legally and deliberately killed, blah, 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 since 1973. They do go into this weird emotional place where they talk about how they're capable of feeling pain and that D&Es are terrible. So let's break this one apart though. So, I mean, is it true that that Black women or Black people are more likely to get an abortion?
The statistics do show that overwhelmingly, I'll just talk in Arizona, they do show that a larger percentage of Black folks who get abortion, a larger percentage of people who get abortion happen to be Black, right? But we make up a minuscule 6% of the population in Arizona. So let's put that into context, right? So yeah, Black folks do have a higher abortion rate per capita than some of our counterparts.
But what this makes me think of too is that, like, the Black people who choose to have an abortion aren't smart enough or capable enough or aware enough to make that decision. I feel like that is what he's insinuating here, that they should not have the autonomy to make those decisions. What's your take on that?
I mean, absolutely. And I think that, when we see that antis who, laser focus on the Black community, that's really what it is. They talk about Margaret Sanger and eugenics and all of that kind of stuff. And, that is what it is. But at the same time, yes, exactly. They fail to acknowledge that Black folks who can become pregnant should have the autonomy to decide what happens with their bodies, especially because our history is filled with the fact that our autonomy has been stripped from us, through slavery, right? We've seen just in the last, decade, states having to pay folks who were sterilized by the state involuntarily, right? And so we know that our reproductive rights and our reproductive freedoms are valuable to us because we've had so little freedom and autonomy in the history of this country. But I feel perfectly capable of making my own reproductive decisions, while Blackman is capable of making his. So why is he so paternalistic about everyone else's?
Yeah, and again, I mean, when we talk about abortion, it's becoming clear and clear. I mean, folks like us, I think that we've seen this for a while. We know that this is religious, zealotry. They want to impose their religious ideologies on everybody. At the same time, saying things like "my body, my choice" when it comes to wearing a mask during a deadly pandemic. So there's just so much hypocrisy there. And, we talk about it here all the time, that white Christian nationalism is the greatest threat to our democracy. I watched the video last night, the hearings that started last night. And there was the last scene of that 12-minute video, you could see an American flag and you could see a Christian flag. And throughout the whole thing, you could see Christian flags kind of dotting the landscape, as well as Jesus Saves, or a picture of Jesus wearing a MAGA hat. And so this is entirely motivated by religion. And I believe, I don't know, Walt Blackman, I think he's a Mormon, perhaps.
I don't know. He's something crazy. I don't know what denomination Walt is, but I'm sure his ideology is built upon some sort of Judeo-Christian. I won't even say Judeo because Jews believe in abortion, right? Mm-hmm. So I won't even, some white Christian nationalist stuff. And yes, Black people, this is how white supremacy works. You get groups like the Proud Boys, which is overwhelmingly Latino, right? You get groups like that involved in white nationalism all the time because it has a lot to do with proximity to whiteness and wanting to attain the level of whiteness. And so they will visit white supremacy on folks in their own communities as well as outside communities, right? So we're seeing this all over the place. But quite frankly, before the 1970s, religious organizations were not so concerned about abortions. And the Southern Baptist Convention actually was okay with abortions. The only time they changed their mind is when they could see it as a wedge issue for election purposes. So I don't believe half of these people really believe that we should be an anti-abortion nation, especially because so many of them receive abortions and pay for it behind closed doors.
Right. And I mean, this is a guy who is now running for Congress. In the debate on Arizona Horizon, he said that birth begins at conception. And he also said that anybody who tries to obtain, facilitate, or perform an abortion should be criminalized. He may have even said something darker than that, but I don't remember.
Well, if you'll recall, in last legislative session, Walt Blackman was the person who put forth the bill that made abortions, receiving an abortion, giving an abortion, death penalty eligible. So much for being pro-life, right? You're willing to put people to death for having an abortion, for making reproductive healthcare decisions for themselves that work best for themselves and their families. So don't believe the hype. Walt Blackman isn't pro-life. You know, he's not pro-life. He's pro-death penalty.
Yeah, I think at this point, we're starting to realize that there are many representatives at the state and national level who are pro-control, pro maintaining power, and in some cases, pro-cruelty. But it's really about maintaining control and being able to control certain groups of people because they feel like their control is slipping away.
Right, absolutely. And I think we can see that with, like, you know, even looking back at what you just said with the January 6th hearings. I watched last night as well, and I just was, you know, I said to someone, I didn't pay too much attention to it when it was happening because I was like, oh, well, you know, angry white people are going to do what they do. Our history books are full of these sorts of things, right? But, you know, to really take a look at how far they will go just because they feel that their power and, you know, their place of power is being challenged. It was, you know, it was really frightening to see when the video was laid out. And I watched the video without sound the first time. And I just sat there and I was like, whoa, right? And so they, you know, but the anti-abortion groups are filled with white Christian nationalists and vice versa. So, you know, they might have been mad at the election, or that was the pretense for why they gathered, but you bet your bottom dollar they're coming for abortion, they're coming for birth control, they're coming for people making their own decisions about their bodies. You know, it's happening. We're at that point right now.
You know, we're, even though they insist that this will not affect gay marriage or interracial marriage, it does seem that that is just the next couple of things on the chopping block. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And any kind of freedoms that are based in the right to privacy. So even, you know, gay folks, LGBTQ folks having consensual sexual relations, right? They're going to criminalize being gay and trans. They're already on the road to doing that now, especially with our trans kids, and denying them affirming medical care, and, you know, criminalizing their parents, allowing them affirming medical care, preventing them from being able to play in school sports. So, you know, all of these things are connected. They're all connected. And I think that, you know, we've been begging people to kind of have an intersectional approach about our issues and especially other social justice issues. They're all connected and they're coming for all of it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were having a discussion at our staff meeting too the other day, and then I was reading an article by Robert Wright, and, you know, we really are kind of already in a civil war. It might not be as like in our face as what, but this is it. And after, you know, it was Robbie Sherwood today posted on Twitter a video of the Yavapai County Oath Keepers, and they are preparing for World War III. And it was from January 9th, 2021. So 3 days after the insurrection. And they had more people at their meeting that day than they had ever had. 420 something people were there. And I'm just curious, and, you know, and we have Quan Nguyen in the House, who is a self-proclaimed oath keeper. We have Kelly Townsend, who is a self-proclaimed oath keeper. Mark Fincham. Well, and then we have some at the congressional level, Gosar and Biggs. And somebody made a joke yesterday about, you know, you have to drink every time somebody says Arizona during these hearings, but I don't think any of us would be able to survive that if we attempted that. So don't do that, folks at home. Don't do that. So, okay, now here's one that really gets me because he uses words. So then he gave this speech at the end of, somebody's going to screen capture that and use it against me, I guarantee it. But he likes to throw around these very serious words like genocide and extermination. And he compares abortions to, Black people having an abortion, to genocide, to extermination. And he compares it to, what happened in the Holocaust and in concentration camps. So I'd love to get your take on that one.
Well, fetuses aren't human beings, number one. So I'm so not worried about comparing it to mass death events for actual living, breathing people, right? I think that that's an unfair comparison. But I also think that, they use that strong language for this, but what are they inviting? But a genocide or a Holocaust by who's saying that for people who become pregnant should be put to death if they choose to have an abortion.
Right.
What else are they calling for at this point in time? We know that 1 in 4 folks who can become pregnant choose to have an abortion. What does that mean? I just, Walt likes to make blustery speeches and his jaw goes a little crazy and he's like, what about the Black babies? And I just don't buy it. I don't think anybody should buy it.
Yeah.
It's quite comical.
Well, and again, by saying that somebody who makes that medical decision, that healthcare decision for themselves, that they are incapable and now they're guilty of committing genocide. So make up your mind. Do you care about Black people or do you not? Because this is so all over the place and hypocritical. It's insane.
I've got a secret for you. Walt Blackman doesn't care about Black people. He just simply doesn't. He simply doesn't. I think he's using the Black communities as a political tool. And he's been able to, get some cachet with respect to his criminal justice stances. But I don't take those seriously either, because again, this is the man that wanted to give the death penalty to people for having abortions. So no one should take him seriously, certainly not on the Democratic side. And we'll be happy that he won't be in our legislature next year, but he has a really strong possibility of representing us in Congress, and that scares me.
Yeah, indeed. That is very scary. I am going to now, because this is the one that they love to use. They love to talk about Margaret Sanger. So can you just maybe, and I don't want, we're not going to be here all day, but this is what he says. He says, he quotes her, discusses the Negro Project, and I remember in 2020, Planned Parenthood gave a really great kind of informational session about the history of Planned Parenthood. I thought it was really interesting. And how do you combat that message with your organization?
Well, I would say number one, there is no organization that has existed for over a century, like Planned Parenthood has, that doesn't have some race problems, right? We all live in this world, in this country, and so I think that that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that, just as Walt Blackman trades in things with some of his buddies, Margaret Sanger did the same, right? There's some evidence linking her to some social Darwinist groups, and she was able to raise money from those groups. Out of that fundraising came the research that led to the birth control. Planned Parenthood also has a really complicated racial history. Things that is Alexis McGill Johnson, our Planned Parenthood Federation's president and CEO, gave a really great speech that said that we need to call these things out, pay attention to them, and we've stepped back from anything dealing with Margaret Sanger in general because we understand the climate that we're in right now. And we're not going to make excuses for the things that she was a part of, but at the same time, Planned Parenthood is a very old organization. And there are many other old organizations that have complicated histories with respect to race, and histories that we would not stand behind right now, and that's fine. I don't see anybody sending their PCs back to IBM. Let me just say that.
Right.
So
exactly.
yeah, it's very it's very complicated, but what we're doing today is providing people with all of the information that they need to make the proper reproductive healthcare choices for themselves, autonomous decisions. And regardless of what Margaret Sanger did before she passed away, that's what we're doing today. And we're providing the tools for people to make the decisions that are best for themselves, full stop.
Well, I just want to thank you. I think we've kind of hit all of the points that he's trying to make here. But I know that every Monday when I wake up, I don't know what's going to be going on. And I don't, what is it, Mondays and Wednesdays when decisions come out? So, I'm just tense all the time. And I'm sure that our members and anybody who might be watching on Facebook is wondering, like, what's the next step? When Roe goes away, which we're all but certain it does, it's going to, what can people do to not feel helpless and to help people who become pregnant?
Okay, so number one, I want to encourage everyone to relax. Loosen your jaws, take a deep breath, drink some water, right? We know what's going to happen, or at least we think we know what's about to happen. All of our information is told us it's not happening until June, at the end of this month, right? At the end of this month. So every week someone's calling me like, is it gonna be? No, it's not. And I'm always right. So I've been right thus far. So it's coming at the end of June. I think what you can do right now is not panic, because this didn't happen overnight, right? This has been a slow march, a 50-year march even. And so we've gotten to this point now. It may take us a little while to get back to where we need to be. So everyone needs to be committed to having a long-term strategy and being with us for the long haul. Right now, the thing that I'm telling people to do is make sure that you're staying plugged into all of the information that you can get. You can donate to Planned Parenthood. You can donate to your local abortion fund. You can donate to your local independent abortion provider, right? And so, make sure that you're providing those funds for folks, because we're going to have to figure out how to get people abortions outside of this state, right? There's no strategy to abortions, right? Anything. Well, we provide abortions, right? And so our primary goal is to make sure that we're making sure that our patients get the care that they need. And so your dollars go a long way to helping us do that. But I want you all to vote in your primary, even if you're tired of voting, just vote in your primary, make sure you're voting for.
All right, she's kind of a little bit more frozen than she has been. Not sure if she's going to be able to make it back. I went ahead and put in the chat here. There's nobandsaz.com. That is a website where you can
fight the fight. Supporting. Okay, I think I got you back. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, support your candidate. Primary. Make sure you're doing the things that you. Because our governor, our AG, our county attorneys are getting legislative session is going to be a ride and not a good one, right? Because I think we know that we're not going to get the numbers that we need in the legislature. So support those candidates, support independent abortion providers, support abortion funds, support Planned Parenthood.
I know that you also have a list of, endorsed candidates. So if people want to find that, you can go search for Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona and find that information, or find their social media. Let's see. I don't think we're going to be opening it up to questions today, just given the state of internet connections and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to thank you, Chris. You're welcome to stay and hear about the events. That
I
we have.
apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Hey, I'm just grateful that you're here, and you're welcome to stay if you want to hear about the events that we have, or if you've got more work to do, because I know you're a very busy woman, you're welcome to step off. So yeah. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of these events that we have coming. Go ahead. All right. See you.
Oh, just thank you for having me. Yeah. Bye.
Anytime, anytime. All right. So upcoming, and I know that Lindsay will be putting them in the chat, and we can put the link in the Facebook when we get to it. But Friday, June 17th. So next week, we are going to get a legislative update with special guests from Moms Demand Action. As most of you probably heard just yesterday, there was another shooting in Maryland this time, I think it was, in Smithburg or something like that. And it just seems never ending. So I look forward to speaking with the women who are going to be joining us from Moms Against Action, or Moms Demand Action, Wednesday, June 22nd. It will be the the fourth actually of our school board candidate series. So if you're interested in learning more about the Washington Elementary School District Governing Board candidates, please join us at 6 o'clock next, well, the 22nd, Tuesday, I think it's a Wednesday. Then on Tuesday, June 28th, we have Heather Weaver, Senior Staff Attorney with ACLU, Program on Freedom of Religion and Belief, on the implications of SCOTUS case versus Kennedy, or Kennedy versus Bremerton. And that's the one about prayer on the football field, if I'm not mistaken. So that should be a really interesting one too. And again, remember, we are a 501c3 organization. We rely on donations and memberships. And with your membership, you can get invitations to some of our special events. You can sign up for action alerts anytime you want to. We know that there is a budget draft that's floating around. We'll be having a little update about that. But keep your eyes open, because we may need you to use your voice as we see the budget come out and get finalized. So with that, I hope everyone has an absolutely wonderful weekend, and try to stay cool, because we're on like day 3 of a heat advisory. So take care, everybody, and thanks for joining us.